Well, hello there, and welcome to Art of the Week with Katya, episode 15. So, thank you so much for joining me. Long time no see. Let's take a walk down the Calle in Venice and see what we can find. So, we're walking down the Calle. This one's particularly busy tonight. There's a lot going on. We're walking along in Venice, and we come upon, around here, something interesting. This particular structure, which inside of the structure, it holds an icon. And as you saw, the icon was attached to the building. What we're actually going to talk about in this episode is a church that was built around an icon that actually performed a miracle. So we're actually going to start though with this icon that I have shown you, which is of Santa Maria della Salute. And as I showed you, it's attached to the building that is attached to, which is not in fact a church, but a building in the area of the church. This particular icon is an icon of Mary, but it's about, it's constructed surrounding a plague that happened in Venice between 1630 and 1631. At the end of the plague, they built the Church of Our Lady of Health, and her feast day is every year on November 21st. So, of course, we recently passed it, and it's a very big celebration in Venice. And so, as you can see, these kinds of icons are very central to Venetian worship of Venetian forms of Catholicism. Now, the thing about the churches of Venice that you should know, so now we're looking at kind of a wraparound of Santa Maria dei Miracoli, and Santa Maria della Salute is the same way. The thing about the way that churches were built historically in Venice is that oftentimes they were built by incoming powers, or the power of the Doge, or the power of the papacy. They weren't exactly being built for the Venetian peoples. And it's in these couple of churches, for example, like in Salute, which is built by the people because the people survived the plague, but also Santa Maria dei Miracoli, which is one of the earlier churches that was built around this more personal veneration around surrounding the people of Venice. So Miracoli was built on the 23rd of August. Well, the miracle is said to have happened on the 23rd of August, 1481. There was a German man attacked his sister-in-law in a calle, one of the streets, and it's said that he wounded her very badly. And but she prayed to the icon that was there, that was attached to the building, just like the icon that we saw. And in the morning, she was found without any wound on her being, having been completely healed, and it was as though she had never been attacked. And so as a result, a church was built around this icon, and the icon itself was commissioned actually in 1408, and we will see more of it at the end of this video. But the church was consecrated in 1489, so it was built fairly quickly, and it was built by Pietro Lombardo, and it as a result shows some of the earliest Renaissance architectural styles that exists in Venice at this time. The icon is known very much for its miracles. Apparently there's over 100 miracles regarding health generally that the icon has given. They say that the church has healing powers even if you touch the exterior stonework. And as I mentioned about the stonework, actually, so the church, there was the bell tower, unfortunately, collapsed in 1902. And so what you're looking at in this image is a drawing after the reconstruction and the restoration in 1912. But one of the things that is really well known about this church is the stonework, which, as you saw a bit from the exterior facade, is really quite extraordinary. It's not something that you necessarily see in any church per se. It is very specific to here and to this church, the way that this church was constructed, and also how it was restored. It was restored keeping the original stones to the best possible condition that they could be in. There were, of course, other things to consider, such as the salt of the waters, the nearby water. This church is built almost on top of a canal. So, I mean, the factors of humidity and salt exposure to the various kinds of marble is also an issue that they had to consider in the restoration report. And so it's made primarily of 3 different stones. So as we can see now from what is not a black and white image, of course, of the interior, we can see the actual elaborateness, right, of this stone work. It is really quite fantastic, something else. And it is primarily, according to the report, made up of 3 marbles. So we have this red, which is a Verona marble. It's red with dense lumps of carbonate stone and a softer, darker colored filling of clay and iron oxide, according to the report. And we can tell it's this kind of orangey red. We actually see it in many other churches around Venice. It's very different than the more purplish porphyry, which we see in some other churches around Italy. Then there is so we see first of all, the red stone, which you can see here as well. And then we see these other 2 stones over here, which is the creamier stone is the Istrian stone, which is a creamy white. And then the Carrara marble kind of comes in these 2 colors, kind of grayish color and also a more bluish white that we can also see around the church. One should also note from the interior, and you can see these in the exterior as well, these crosses that you can see here made up of these 4 circles of stone, which are definitely of different colors. They weren't specifically described in the report, but these are also different types of marble. I would say, based on how dark the red might be, these could be small circles of porphyry, which, as I think I have mentioned in my other articles, is considered the marble of kings because Constantine insisted on this marble being brought from Egypt, the only place where it can be found, to his city of Constantinople to build his churches. And of course, moving further, then we move on to the place of the icon itself. Now, the icon, due to the fact that this is an image, of course, that was put on the side of a building, that was a home probably, not a church, but is very much to do with private veneration and public access to veneration of these images. Due to the fact that this icon performed a miracle, it has transferred into the role of, and into the language, as we've talked about before, which is possible to be transitory, of relics and reliquaries, and as such, its place is at the altar. So let's have a closer look. So as we can see from this image here, it's not only of the altar space, but it is also of the icon itself, as I said, which was painted in 1408 and was put onto this. It was affixed to a building that was likely a home or just an average building of no particular religious significance of its own sort. This church was built around this, and it really shows how the interesting relationship that local Venetians had over the ages with religion and with the church, especially considering that even today, for example, the great cathedrals of, the big one, San Marco, right, which is kind of emblazoned everywhere, because it was also the symbol of the empire. As I've talked about before, the symbol of the lion is used a lot, not only in Venice, but also the Lion of St. Mark, but is also used in surrounding cities as well. And there's many different lions of St. Mark that I've seen in different places over different eras. And there's even an iconography as far as that's concerned, but I'm really getting off topic. These churches were not churches made for the peoples of Venice. These were churches that were made for powers that were governing Venice, or that were governing the empire, or that were governing another empire that Venice happened to be part of. This happened multiple times, especially during the Middle Ages. In this case, we're dealing with a Venice that is actually starting to gain its own wealth. And as we know from Florence, right, when you have a group of people who is gaining wealth, not just nobility, you start to get other things start to happen, especially the arts gets, and veneration and things like that start to be built, and they're built based on what the people, what a larger group of people are interested in, rather than just as showing the power of an emperor or showing the power of a doge or something of the sort. And as we can see from this church, this definitely happened. As I mentioned before, the other one was called Santa Maria della Salute. It's concerning the health of its citizens and the survival from the plague. This one is Santa Maria dei Miracoli, Saint Mary of Miracles, Our Lady of Miracles, because she performed a miracle to a local Venetian. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time on Art of the Week with Katya. See you soon.